Please continue to abide by health officials' recommended guidelines for wearing face masks and maintaining social distance of 6 feet from one another. Safety briefing. I'd like to invite our Vice President of Safety, Security, and Business Continuity, Shane Hunter, to provide a briefing regarding protocol for all individuals in attendance at the board meeting today in the event of an emergency.
Good afternoon, Shane Hunter, Vice President of Safety and Security. We're currently at 1819 Farnham Street in the Legislative Chamber on the second floor of this building, which is known internally as the LC level. Normal entry and exit was the way we came in, but there is an emergency exit over here behind this accordion panel and one over here as well. Adjacent to both of those emergency exits is also a fire extinguisher. Over here, behind this panel, you'll find the nearest AED for this room. With the AED in mind, can we please have a show of hands of who's CPR and AED trained in the room? Thank you. Should a medical emergency arise, the safety manager, Shane Dockin, will be contacting 911 and awaiting their arrival at the security kiosk at the bottom of the escalator. If we need to evacuate the building for any reason, we'd like everyone to use this exit over here, go down one flight of stairs to the outside, and we'll meet by the flagpole for accountability. For severe weather, since it is severe weather season, we'll use the stairwells to go down 2 flights of stairs to the H level where we'll seek shelter. That concludes the briefing.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Mary.
Frost. Here. McGowan. Howard.
Here.
Kavanaugh.
Here.
Bagley. Here. Cook. Friend. Here.
The Open Meetings Act. I would like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall of the Legislative Chamber. Construction and operations. Mr. DeBoer. Capital expenses.
Good afternoon. Haven't said that before, but good afternoon. And my name is Dave DeBoer. I'm the Chief Operations Officer, and I'll be overviewing the capital expenditures letter and the finals letter. So under tab 5 is the capital expenditures letter. We've got one project this month. It seems like a slow month, but Corey O'Brien's going to make up for that when he gets to the main extensions. This month, it's a ratification for $118,000 to relocate a 12-inch and an 8-inch water main near 13th and Harney Street. This is reimbursable as it is a request from Clearway Energy. The project started earlier this month to align with the City of Omaha's Bikeway project. Kind of a side note on this project, Clearway Energy is a district energy provider in downtown Omaha, so a lot of the district steam and chilled water lines are all purveyed by using natural gas. So they're a significant partner for us. The mains that are being relocated were installed in 1895, so 125 years old. Any questions on the capital expenditures letter? Okay, moving into tab 6 is the acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates. We've got 3 finals this month, and I'll be highlighting 2 of the projects. The first project is item A. It's a Q3 project that will be finalized for $2.4 million. This project replaced almost 6 miles of natural gas infrastructure near 72nd and Spalding, which is up between Maple and Ames, kind of in North Omaha. It had a project increase of about $190,000, primarily due to the restoration costs relating to hard surfaces. So that's some of the street work, the curb work, sidewalk, driveway work. Some of those projects kind of pushed it over a bit. In 2019, this project will wrap up Q3's effort. So we spent just shy of $10 million in almost 27 miles of gas infrastructure replacement. And President Doyle will be highlighting that a little bit next month with the state of the district. So significant effort by Q3. The second project is item B. It's a Kirsten project to install mains in Wood Valley West. It's located near 147th and King, which is close to State Street. This project had a change order for $44,800 for additional shoring, some wrapping of the pipe, primarily related to new standards. This is the VBIO stuff that we started implementing last year. So any questions on the acceptance of contracts and payments of final estimates? Thank you.
Services and Extensions. Mr. O'Brien, Main Extensions. Oh, Mr. Zellers, could you please give us bids? Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Like Dave said, that is kind of strange to say. I'm just glad I didn't say good morning. John Zellers, Vice President of Procurement and Enterprise Services. Bids on materials and contracts may be found under tab 7. There are a couple items I'd like to cover this morning, but first I'd like to make note that as requested, the bid and purchase letters include a distinction between local and non-local bidders, where the non-local bidders are in italics. The first project I'd like to discuss is on page 2, in which we accepted bids for the replacement of valves at the Florence Water Treatment Facility. The board may recall approving the purchase of 3 60-inch and 2 48-inch butterfly valves in June for this project. The existing valves have reached their useful life and no longer provide adequate isolation for cleaning and maintenance of the basins. Hawkins provided the low bid, and they are recommended for approval. The last item I'd like to discuss is the annual quicklime bids shown on pages 2 and 3. We are recommending the low bid for all 3 plants. The low bids represent a 6% to 9% reduction over last year's bids. And that is all I have for you this morning, and would be happy to answer any questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. O'Brien, if you would review Main Extensions under Services and Extensions.
Good afternoon. I'm Corey O'Brien, Vice President of Engineering and Construction. Behind tab 9 is our main extensions letter for the month. We have 7 projects this month, 6 being water main extensions, 1 being a gas main extension. On the water side, the impact is 441 single residence lots, 2 industrial lots, and 1 park lot. On the gas side, we have 10 commercial lots and 1 multi-residence lot. If you look at the map on page 1, you'll see that our 7 projects are rather evenly distributed between 4 of our MUD subdivisions. Turning to page 2, water main extension number 1 will provide water to 2 industrial lots in the Willa subdivision located at the northeast corner of Highway 370 and 144th Street. This project is essentially a mile of 16-inch water main along Highway 370. The developer is paying for the west half mile of this project, as that is the part that fronts their property. Management's recommending that the district pay for the east half mile of this project at an estimated cost of about $637,000, which is significant. But this east half mile of 16-inch main will tie together important mains in 144th Street and 132nd Street, all of which feed to the south to a very busy corridor along 144th Street, a lot of development in that direction. The project itself does lie within the city of Papillion's zoning jurisdiction, but it is in the district's water service territory. The district does have the ability to recover the cost for its half mile of main as development occurs along 370. And lastly, I would note that this project is in the Black Hills gas service area. Kind of a lot on that one. Any questions on that one before I go on to the others? Okay. Water extensions 2 and 3 are pretty routine. I would just mention that both the developers for both of these projects have requested MUD gas. Main extension number 4, again, is fairly straightforward. It's a large residential subdivision. I would just point out to you that that project is in Black Hills service territory also. If you turn to page 3, water main extension number 5 is a fairly small project, routine, but the developer has requested MUD gas. And then last, on number 6, this project is being installed under the district's WCD policy. And as a reminder, that just means that the developer is the one responsible for contracting the installation of the mains. And the developer has requested MUD gas on that project as well. For our gas project, we're providing gas to 7 commercial lots and 1 multi-residence lot in Avenue 1 subdivision at 192nd and West Dodge Road. Additionally, we're providing gas to 3 commercial lots in the Fountain Ridge East subdivision at 187th and Burke. These 2 developments Avenue 1 and Fountain Ridge East are adjacent to each other on the south side of Dodge. Management is recommending oversizing about 6,000 feet of main to a 4-inch main at an estimated cost of about $44,000. And there is a modest deficiency of approximately $33,000 that the developer has agreed to pay. I highlight this one also because it is fairly unusual to have the gas main extension for one developer provide gas to a separate project. But Avenue 1 and Fountain Ridge East and the district cooperated to be able to get gas to Fountain Ridge East lots, and that benefited both Fountain Ridge East and Avenue 1. And so we were able to come together, and that's part of the oversizing, and that's a win for all parties on this one. So that's all I have. It's a lot fast. Any questions? Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Personnel. Ms. Savine will review employee wages and salary increases and ratifications. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Bonnie Savine, Vice President, Human Resources. We'll start with a recap of employee counts for the end of July 2019 and 2020. 797 regular full-time employees and 5 regular part-time employees at the end of July in 2019. So that's a total of 802 regular employees. For 2020, there were 812 regular full-time employees and 3 regular part-time, for a total of 815 regular employees. We also had 3 temporary employees and 13 summer employees at the end of July in this year. Next, behind tab 10, you'll find the wage and or salary increases and ratifications letter. Human Resources is recommending the Board of Directors approve wage or salary increases for 21 employees this month. 6 OAC employees are being promoted due to the normal promotion process through job postings. 7 OAC employees are being promoted through the natural job progression process, and 8 SPA employees are being promoted as well into SPA jobs. Under Section 5, the last section of the letter, you'll also see a recommendation to ratify the salaries of 3 new SPA employees. The employees were hired into facilities, transportation, and water quality. The starting salaries are within the approved salary grades for each of those positions. Questions?
Bonnie, I don't have a question about this, but I have a general question. Does it look like you're going to be able to do the health event this October? That was such a good event, and it looked to me like it was so well attended when I was there.
It was, yes, it absolutely was. We had a meeting about a week ago to talk about open enrollment processes for next year's health plans. We have a few ideas in mind. It will certainly have to be modified. So when we know more, we will certainly share it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Okay.
Mr. Mendenhall and Bonnie, please present an update on the Blue Cross Blue Shield Health Insurance Policy Administration.
Yeah, good afternoon, Director Howard. My name is Mark Mendenhall, Senior Vice President, General Counsel. I'd like to continue the conversation from last month's board meeting where we were talking about the administration of the health insurance and pharmacological insurance plan through Blue Cross and Blue Shield. These were issues raised by an employee that came and spoke with you. I'll have a few comments. Ms. Savine, I believe, will have some more specific comments relating to the pre-authorization process, which was at issue last month. And then we're also joined by a few representatives from Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And so the comments that I wanted to make are that this is the administration of this contract is a 3-year agreement that runs through 2021. Each year we have an annual review with Ms. Nash and her team, and a few of the details from that annual review I think are relevant for you all and appropriate for you to hear. So what I found are important is to understand the breadth of our plan. And so if I'm reading it right, and if I'm not, I'm sure Bonnie and Ms. Nash and her team will correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe I saw there were 3,135 members enrolled in our plan. And so it's not just the 819 employees. It includes retirees, dependents, spouses, so a whole set of people that we take care of. So 3,135. In 2019, just the medical only, so medical claims only, 67,600 plus claims were processed. So throughout the course of that year, January through December, that I think also, again, gives you an understanding of of what that plan, what the administration of that plan requires. $25.5 million were paid out, MED dollars paid out under that plan for 2019. And then lastly, I would mention, in addition to just the administration, the day-to-day administration of the plan, so reviewing the medical and the pharmacological claims that come through, Blue Cross and Blue Shield have met with us regarding some initiatives, some opportunities that they view that could be beneficial to us that we've already implemented and some that we might implement for 2021. So cost-saving measures that include some smoking cessation programs, some diabetes member information, some different pharmaceutical plans to help reduce drug costs. So different things like that that we appreciate as we look through and prepare for next year's budget plan. So high level, that was the comments that I'd like to make. Ms. Savine, I think, can address some more specifics regarding pre-authorizations. And then I believe, oh, and I'm sorry for you all, Blue Cross did give me a handout. I provided it to you all for Directors Cook and McGowan, who I believe are watching this via live stream. I will send that to them. This was prepared by Blue Cross for your benefit, and then I believe Blue Cross might make a few comments as well. So.
Thanks, Mark. Again, good afternoon. I'll take just a few minutes. I want to provide some information regarding prior authorizations for treatment or healthcare services, and then some claims stats. A prior authorization or certification under our health plan would be a determination by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Nebraska or its designee that an admission, extension of stay, or other healthcare service has been reviewed and, based on the information provided, meets the clinical requirements for medical necessity, appropriateness, level of care, or effectiveness under the auspices of the applicable health benefit plan. So we do have two health plans, and they work the same, okay? Providers and their staff can use the provider portal to access Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Nebraska's medical policies, and that would allow them to take steps to confirm which procedures need prior authorizations. They can submit the request and any necessary medical records or substantiation online. They also have the option to call the Blues Service Center to discuss a pre-authorization. As part of the administrative services Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Nebraska performs for the district, notification to the requesting provider and a copy to the member would be sent advising of approval or denial of the request. A review of the prior authorizations was completed for 2018, 2019, and year-to-date 2020. This review revealed total authorizations, so the pre-authorizations, the total denied in 2018 were 7.48% of all prior authorizations. In 2019, 8.9%, and in 2020, so far year-to-date, 6.96%. And when we compared those pre-authorization denials to the total number of claims, Mr. Mendenhall mentioned the 2019 total, but we looked at all 3 years again, and the percent of prior authorization denials in 2018 was 0.12% of total claims processed. In 2019, the prior authorization denials equaled 0.11% of total claims processed, and year-to-date 2020 equals 0.12%. And certainly an appeal can be completed after the denial of a service. A provider can submit additional documentation to overturn a denial. An appeal process is provided in the communication that is sent to the member and the provider. And there's also information regarding the appeal process in the district's health plan documents. At this time, I will invite our account executive, Julie Nash, and she is accompanied by Medical Policy Director, Dr. Esser, to provide some additional comments.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's very nice to be here with you. We just provided a few talking points for you. I've been working with MUD since 2017 and really have enjoyed working with their staff. They're always very welcoming and they're always very willing to really help take a product and bring it to their employees, which is very refreshing when we're working with your members because you are so engaged. So Blue Cross, we're really here to try and work with MUD to help bring lower costs to your members. And our strategic vision is to continue working with our providers to work on the whole health care of your members, not just a fee-for-service type service that we have done for the past many years. We've brought total care into that product, which means that our doctors are working on the whole health care of your employee. And with us, we're right here in Nebraska. We're right off of 60th there in Exarban Village, so we're really close to your HR office there. And we have a great relationship with Bonnie, Katie, and Ann there and the team. So moving on to page 3, I just want to reiterate, MUD is what we call an administrative service only plan, an ASO plan. So what that means is MUD is actually paying for those claims. Blue Cross Blue Shield receives the claim in-house, we process it, we pay the provider, and then we pull the funds from MUD to pay for those services needed. We have medical directors in-house. We currently are back up to 6 medical directors, plus Dr. Esser, who's our chief medical director. They review the pre-authorizations as they come in. And then also when we have a special service that Dr. Esser can talk about, let's say we have a member who has brain cancer, and they really need an external specialist, we have an internal review organization that our medical directors can use to talk about those services needed for those high dollar special needs situations. So we have a lot of options available to make sure your members are getting the right care at the right time and that the services are correct. So I will invite Dr. Esser to come up to talk about the pre-authorization process.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk primarily on slide 4. Thank you very much for allowing us to come this afternoon. I'm Deb Esser. I'm a family practitioner. I've been with Blue Cross Blue Shield now for 5 years. And I just wanted to go over a little bit about why we do what we do. Our prior authorizations are not meant to be just a barrier to care. This is for patient safety. We do know that indiscriminate use of certain tests, such as CT scan with radiation, can be a cause of cancer. We want to be able to maintain quality and cost effectiveness. We know that you only want to pay for procedures and services that are validated and that work. And we want to be a good fiduciary partner for our groups. When we look at our prior authorization list, it is primarily procedures, utilization such as inpatient, skilled, or long-term care, and then pharmacy. And it's really important for us to look at pharmacy because when we have the availability of all the patient's drug histories, we can look for drug interactions that are important for patient safety. We do have an automatic prior authorization tool, and when our doctors use that, we have a 65% auto authorization, which means when the doctor's office goes in and puts in the criteria, 65% of the time they get an automatic approval at that time. If they cannot have an approval, then they upload the medical information and it goes to medical review. Our overall denial rate is about between 10 and 11%, but as Bonnie said, on the MUD side, it's about 8 to 9%. For right now in 2020, it is 6.7%. The cost savings for medical management, watching the length of stay within the hospitals, the inappropriate use of imaging, and helping our patients transition back to home after utilization was about $1.15 million last year. And with that, I'll take any questions.
I have a question. When you refer to medical review, what is that made of? How many, what staff, what's their backgrounds?
Mm-hmm. If an authorization cannot be approved immediately through that auto authorization process, the information that is submitted from the doctor's office is looked at by a nurse, and she applies the criteria. And if she can approve it, she will. If she cannot approve it, then it goes to an MD for review. There are times when we do not have the expertise that we use, and we also have available to us our external review organizations. So as Julie talked, if we really wanted to see if this new drug or this new procedure would be good for this pediatric patient, we can send that review out. All of our doctors are board certified, and all of our nurses and physicians have at least 5 years of clinical experience. We
So
have
the
about
final-
80 nurses and 5 physicians.
Sorry, the final decision then on a denial is made by an MD, correct?
Yes. A nurse
Thank you.
cannot deny, only an MD can deny.
Thank you.
Following up on that, when there is a denial, well, let's back up for a minute. If an individual has a medical situation and Blue Cross Blue Shield refers that individual to their specialist of their choice, and then let's just say that individual is turned down by the specialist of the Blue Cross Blue Shield's choice, what explanation is given? Is that a thorough explanation? Is it just a refusal? How explanatory is this?
Oftentimes, when we do a review, we find that we don't have all the information that we need. We do make an outreach to the doctor's office to see if we can get that information, but if that information is not forthcoming, we do know that we have to, not me, we do know that we have to.
I think that's Director Frost quacking.
I have that same ring, but I was sure I put it on silent. So we do have to make our determination within a certain time frame in order for us to maintain our accreditation as a health plan.
So, in other words, you don't just send a letter saying we refuse this treatment
No.
to the insurer. You contact that doctor and you discuss it with that doctor, because there could be situations where you need more information. I mean, I would certainly see that happening.
Yes.
But if the doctor would just get a refusal and doesn't have a clue as to the reason behind the refusal, he can't do much.
Our denial letters will always have a rationale. It will say, we don't have any documentation that the patient has had a recent mammogram, or we don't have documentation that the patient has had physical therapy. And so the doctor, when they get that denial letter, and the member know exactly what we're missing in order to make that approval.
But this is already a situation where the patient has been sent to a specialist, so those things would have already happened.
Not necessarily.
Before you'd send them to your specialist, you would not request these?
You would be surprised.
Well, no, I wouldn't, but I don't quite understand. If you're missing pieces that don't require a specialist, don't you inform the patient or the subscriber of that?
I want to make sure that we're on the same wavelength and talking about the same thing. So when we get the information for the request, and we don't have enough information, we make an outreach to the doctor's office. But if they don't send us the information, we will deny it based on there's no documentation of physical therapy.
And we're talking about a doctor that you've referred this individual to.
No.
Well, that's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
actually.
No, we, through our case management, sometimes we do help the patient pick physicians, but we don't ever make a referral to a patient and say, you need to go see this doctor.
To see your specialist.
We
You
never
don't have
do
a list of individuals you refer
No.
patients to. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, just to clarify, so your members have the option to go out to the provider finder portal that we have and pick any provider that's in network. So a lot of times you may have a member who has their primary care physician, but yet they have a back problem, so they go to a chiropractor. Those primary care physicians and the chiropractors aren't talking together because there's not that connection there. So a lot of times a member has the choice to go to whomever they want to. So there's sometimes a gap in that communication. That's why we're really bringing our total care product into house, so that member can have that strong relationship with their primary care physician, and that primary care physician can help through all those services.
When pre-authorization is denied, first of all, thanks for being here this afternoon. We appreciate the information and the two of you being here to answer questions. Thank you for that. When a pre-authorization is denied, and an appeal is made, is there consultation with somebody at MUD? Does it ever get to that point where that discussion occurs? And if so, who is part of that discussion?
The process for a denial is that when the provider and the member get that denial letter, they can ask for a peer-to-peer, which means they can call and talk to the doctor who did the denial to see if they can offer that information or fax it or whatever, or they can choose to do an appeal. When an appeal comes in, it is sent to one of our external review organizations if it is a specialist, because we are all primary care in our medical director team, and we do specialty matched appeals. So if it's a cardiologist, we send it to a cardiologist. If it's a general surgeon, we send it to a general surgeon. But if it's a primary care, we can do those in-house. The only time that I believe it would come to MUD would be if they have been through the whole appeal process and it has been upheld, then it could come to MUD.
I was just going to say, it wouldn't automatically come to us even at that level. At that stage, it would be incumbent upon the member to say, okay, I've exhausted all of my Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Nebraska appeal steps, and so MUD, can you review this for us? And that would be the time that we would get involved.
And Bonnie, I think you mentioned this in your presentation, that the employees are informed as to how to appeal any pre-authorization that's been denied.
Yes.
And Doctor, you mentioned the peer-to-peer. Is that ever, you mentioned this also, is that ever physician to physician, your physician to my physician? Because if it's a peer-to-peer from doctor to an employee, I would think that that would...
Exactly right. Our peer-to-peer is from the requesting physician to our doctor.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
What would be the number we'd call if we had additional questions?
You can reach out to me as well. Bonnie
Could you
has-
give me your name again?
My name is
don't
Julie
think we got
Nash.
that initially.
Julie Nash, Nash.
And your number is?
We'll give it to you after.
I stumped you.
I have it, but-
Well, thank you for coming in.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, did you want?
One last comment before we turn it over to Mr. Schaffert. Unrelated to this topic, but I spoke with Director McGowan, and so if I can jump to the next tab, unless there's any other questions.
Sure.
I spoke with Director McGowan this morning, late morning, and he acknowledged that he made the request for Mr. Schaffert to bring this next discussion, and so he wanted me to express his regrets to you all that he is not here to engage in the conversation, but that he is going to be watching via the live stream. So, thank you.
As Joe makes his way up, I have to, go ahead, Joe. To follow up on what we just discussed, there's a lot of irony in the fact that we're going to have to postpone our health fair because of a health issue.
Do I need to do something here? Right here.
Mr. Schaffert, please review financial impact of COVID. That's a big topic.
It is. Good afternoon, Joe Schaffert. I serve as the Chief Financial Officer for the district. And since we're all wearing masks, we're going to talk about a pandemic. And as Mr. Mendenhall indicated, this was in response to Director McGowan's request from the July meeting. So I have a few slides that I wish to take you through. And really what some of this is, it's an update to an email that I sent to the board in June. So the first slide you see, which we've read about a lot of these stats in the news, but so you're seeing unemployment stats for the January through June time period. The light gray bar are national stats, the light blue bar are the state of Nebraska stats, and the dark blue bar are stats for the Omaha metropolitan statistical area. And I did that because that's a better match to our customer base than is the state, but it's not perfect because it includes counties in Iowa as well as counties beyond who we serve. It's no great mystery. It's increased dramatically beginning in April and starting to tail off. They're expecting revised national statistics to be released tomorrow by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. With the resurgence of the virus throughout the country, it remains to be seen what ultimately happens with these stats. what was interesting, there's a lot of people predicting the duration of this, and the fact is it's unknown. But during the July 20th meeting of our Insurance and Pensions Committee, Vanguard kind of weighed in on this topic because of its impact on the economy. And they're estimating that by year-end 2020, the national stat will be a 10% unemployment rate. They're projecting a 5% unemployment rate by the end of 2021. So the only way that happens is with widespread availability of a vaccine, frankly. The other thing that has served to mitigate the financial impact of unemployment stats that are dramatic is the level of federal stimulus that's occurred. We know that there's a second package being debated probably as we speak, with, I understand, a deadline set for tomorrow, so we'll see how they perform. The final thing or stat I wanted to share from an economic health or lack of health perspective is the Commerce Department estimates that the gross domestic product dropped by nearly 33% on an annualized basis in the second quarter, the sharpest drop since records have been maintained, which dates back to 1947. The previous drop that was biggest on record since that time was 10% in 1958. So probably not a great big shock to anybody, but it's dramatic, and again, the stimulus is doing something to mitigate that. This slide presents accounts receivable aging statistics for the January through July time period. Again, when you look at, this is a basic measure to look at the quality or likely collectability of amounts owed. The light blue charts are current, meaning they're less than 30 days old. The dark blue are greater than 30, and there's varying slices of time frame. We look at that greater than 30. This is a statistic that we track, and I send it to the senior team on a weekly basis. It is quite obvious what happens when the pandemic hit in large measure. With April, it started to get dramatically worse. And you can see, what the percent current has done from pre-pandemic, to current pandemic. Certainly there's by virtue of the fact that 25.1% and 25.9% were greater than 30 days old in January and February, you always have some level of receivables that are older than current, just for varying economic reasons. That's the reality of serving a broad socioeconomic demographic. Two contributors. The obvious one is what's going on with unemployment. But I would say a second contributor, and it's conjecture on my part, but I think it's true, is that we suspended, as the board is aware, both late payments and turnoffs, which was absolutely the right thing to do. But you do have households that are having to prioritize their bills. So if there are no consequences, there is an ability for them to pay another bill first. That is just human nature, and we understand that. But I suspect that's a contributor as well. To put the percentages kind of into numbers and into perspective, so at February 29th, pre-pandemic, we had $45.4 million in outstanding receivables, which is gas, water, and sewer combined. Of that amount, 25.9%, or $11.7 million, was greater than 30 days old. Of that amount, $9.1 million was over 90 days old. So now go to the most current time frame presented at July 25th. We had $38.1 million in combined receivables outstanding, and 39% of that was greater than 30 days old, or almost $15 million. The amount greater than 90 days grew to $11.4 million. So again, while this doesn't mean these won't be paid, it means we're not collecting them as fast as we were pre-pandemic. Ultimately, we don't know what we'll write off. Hopefully a small amount. Now, a bit of encouraging news. So a couple of days ago, we refreshed this, so there's more current data than what's on this chart. As of July 31st, the 0 to 30 day statistic bumped up to 64.4% from 61% a week prior. And a big contributor to that is we received a fairly significant layer of LIHEAP, or Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program funds, of $2.1 million. And some additional funding from the city on sewer. The vast majority of that had been applied by the end of the month, and that's serving to improve the receivable position. So the aid is getting out there. None of the CARES Act dollars have been applied yet because you can't even apply for them yet. I believe, if Ms. Mueller told me correctly, that starts Monday? Okay. So a slightly different way to look at this, but certainly related. So this slide looks at accounts that are eligible for disconnect. And again, you always have some level of people that fall into this category. So what the horizontal bar represents is the average number of people or accounts eligible for disconnect for the pre-pandemic period. So it's the period April 2019 through February of 2020. And obviously, a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's increased dramatically. So by the time you reach the end of June, you're at 9,966 accounts, a 95% increase from the baseline. So dramatic. Now again, with the more current data after that aid was applied, that LIHEAP aid I just talked about, that number has dropped to 8341 by the end of July. And we would expect it to drop further when the CARES Act funding begins to be applied. What this chart shows is the amount owed that relates to those accounts that are eligible for disconnect. So again, there's always a base level. The base level amount owed for accounts subject to disconnect pre-pandemic was $2.5 million. You can see that it grew to $6.3 million by the end of June. Again, the good news is that did drop with the application of that aid down to $5.5 million by the end of July. But needless to say, it's still a significant uptick in dollars owed that are getting older and frankly subject to disconnect. So in addition to slowing of receivable collections, the other obvious impact is the fact that we've spent money related to the pandemic. So you see several categories of labor represented there. The premium pay is probably the most obvious one on there in terms of what that is, and that's overtime. And the vast majority of that was incurred in affiliation with the quarantine of our water plants that happened from April 1 through May 1. The other categories, labor pandemic leave, the district offered 80 hours of pandemic-related leave for a whole host of reasons. You know, you had symptoms, you were providing childcare, employee self-quarantine, et cetera. The district-directed leave, again, several different categories. An obvious one is that when the water plant employees weren't quarantined, we needed to do everything we could to keep them healthy to go back into the plant when their next shift was up. So they were paid to stay home during the non-quarantine hours. That's one of several categories. And then finally, you have the benefits associated with that. The appliance food trailers line, the 300,000 listed, the vast majority of that relates to the purchase of the 24 trailers that were used at the plants to quarantine the employees. The 200,000 at the bottom, all other, that's PPE, that's IT-related costs to a facility, people working from home and things like that. So $3.5 million, I would not describe this all as incremental because we had budgeted to pay people. It's just that they're doing slightly different things in certain cases.
Joe, is all this reimbursable through the CARES Act?
I would say it's, we're in that process right now. In fact, we've just started the process with FEMA because the state requires you to go to FEMA first, state and county both. So we have our FEMA rep identified. We've had conversations with that person, and I would say it's really too early to answer that. The most obvious ones that are eligible are incremental costs. Then it's a question of, well, if it was in your budget, is it really pandemic related? And that remains to be seen. The fact is they're not doing what we budgeted them to do, but the dollars were in the budget. Mm-hmm. So we're being very transparent with the FEMA rep. Obviously, that's the proper thing to do. And we're going to work through the process. It takes time. Those are never quick conversations. And early on, right away, we started gathering this data. Right. We've had our arms around it from the beginning, and we continue to update this on a monthly basis. So long-winded answer to, we're not exactly sure, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Are we still using the trailers?
They're not currently being used. They're still stored at the water plants, but we're keeping them around, only not knowing, what the future holds. Right. We hope we don't have to quarantine the plants again, but we rely on Incident Commander Mr. Osdemore and others in that capacity to make those decisions.
And our long-range intent is to sell those.
Likely, yes.
And I think you're smart in hanging on to them right now because it doesn't look like we're at the end of this.
No. I think absent the availability of a vaccine, I think the end is not in sight. So again, early on, we realized that the duration of this event is unpredictable, which makes it really, it's interesting when you go through an exercise like this. When you do it, when you're doing the budget, you kind of know how much money you're trying to save. Well, in a case like this, it was, we need to save everything we can or defer everything we can, and if it turns out to be good news, you don't defer the cost. That hasn't been the case so far, but so obviously the effects have been, we're collecting receivables slower and we've spent dollars related to the pandemic, so we saw the need to act. And I will really commend my colleagues. This was very much a collaborative. This was not a force it down your throat kind of exercise. This was rally the troops, get around a virtual table, and figure out what can we defer without harming the business. And we came up with, as the chart shows, $17.4 million between capital and consulting. There are additional details in the appendix if you want to look at that. On the water side, that $10 million, about $6 million of that's mains. $3 million relate to the water plants, primarily Platte South, and then the other is kind of rounding. Gas department, $6.8 million, 1.5 is mains. $1 million's IT related, and then some construction equipment, construction vehicles were deferred. On the staffing side, you can see the positions we deferred. I think this came up at our previous board meeting. This is not a hiring freeze. We do expect, even with these deferrals, to exit 2020 with more employees than we had at the end of 19. In fact, we're forecasting full-time headcount of 835 at year end, and that compares to 810 at the end of 2019. We're just applying a lot of rigor in whether or not we can defer the position and not harm the district. So a lot of measures taken, and we feel like we entered the pandemic in a very good financial position, but we just couldn't sit on our hands when this was going on. We had to act, so that's how we've acted. The final slide is kind of the punchline. I mean, what does this do to your cash position? And I guess a couple overarching comments before I comment on the specific size of the business. These are unrestricted cash dollars, which means these are dollars over and above the money we have to put away every month to fund our bonds, the principal and interest. The board is aware we have just north of $250 million in bonds outstanding. And on an annual basis, it costs $22.7 million to service those bonds. So every month we put away some cash to fund that account. They call them sinking funds, and that's what we pay interest and principal from. These are funds above and beyond that. So really, as you look at this, would these cash balances be higher were it not for the pandemic? Absolutely. I mean, just the slowdown in receivable collection probably is in the $3.5 to $4 million range between gas and water combined. But we feel like the steps we've taken to mitigate that in terms of deferrals is covering that. In fact, probably more than covering that right now. So you see that and you think, well, wow, water cash is still dropping pretty dramatically, and it is. But the thing you can't lose sight of is the fact that even at the annual low to this point of $70.4 million, it's still 330 days of cash. Our goal is 180 days of cash. We're in good shape on cash. The biggest thing that's impacting this is seasonality. I looked at 3 years of monthly cash data for both sides of the business, and water typically experiences a low in the May to June timeframe because that's the beginning of when you use a lot of water. And obviously, we use a lot of water in May or in June even. Problem is, it hasn't been collected yet. So you've got a big bunch of bills out there that are sitting on the balance sheet in accounts receivable, and they're likely going to be collected slower than they would have been otherwise. We fully expect these balances to start ramping up in July. The other thing that's bringing it down just a little bit is, of course, we have ongoing 2019 flood repairs because, the pandemic hasn't been enough of a challenge. We're also dealing with the flood from 19 and repairing things there. We've spent about, let's see, where is the number? $1.2 million more than we've collected. We've incurred about $3.2 million cumulatively to repair the flood damage, and we've collected $2 million in cash advance from the carrier. We expect to get another $1 million to $1.5 million very soon. That'll help this. On the gas side, the story is very similar. It's largely driven by seasonality. And again, when you look at 3 years worth of monthly cash data, the gas department typically experiences a high in the June-July timeframe because by then you've collected all the heating season sales. And so it starts to peak and then it starts to drop because obviously the gas sales drop in the summer. So the vast majority of this pattern is seasonality. But there's no question the amounts would be higher were it not for the pandemic. So are there any questions I can answer? Very well, thank you.
I'd have to say you've done an amazing job weathering, the entire staff. It's admirable
yes.
that you you work so well together, and it really tells in tough times.
That's why I thought it was so important to mention that, this wasn't a, pound your fist on the desk and say, let's cut. This was, people all realize we're in this together. We've got to be collaborative. Let's do this. And people have been phenomenal. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Kubat, legislative and judicial, and I've been looking forward to this.
Rick Kubat.
Yeah, no pounding on the desk.
Government relations, I believe on tab 11 is the legislative report. There's no need to take action. The report itself was just an update on where various bills are. This should be brief. The main thing going on right now is, as of yesterday, there was a compromise of a property tax credit bill that had 3 components: property tax, funding for UNMC's next project. In addition to that, Senator Coulterman's business incentive plan. That advanced from general file. The legislature's focused in on that. There are 3 legislative days remaining in the session. That's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. The only other thing that I would update the board with, after this letter was drafted, a lot of the legislative studies or legislative resolutions came out, and one of the frequent flyers that we kind of consistently have is Senator McDonald has introduced legislative resolution 333, which is the study of the potential for a reservoir near Ashland.
Rick, quick question for you. LB 242, are we going to hitch up again during the next session and take a stab at this again? What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, we have the elections coming up, but I think we gathered some momentum this time around. I think we've made progress, but what are your thoughts on taking a shot at it again?
We did make progress in getting it out on the floor and it prioritized, and having the body debate it was certainly a good thing. Going into the session, I was pretty excited in the sense that the state's fiscal situation was relatively healthy, and so it was a good time to go down and ask for some assistance. As far as where it stands in this session, almost any bill that had an appropriation with it, as you know, Director Bagley, are deemed to be suspect right away because of the state's current fiscal situation with the pandemic. That being said, in conversations with all of you, I look forward to being engaged with the body and figuring out when timing is going to be appropriate again. Is that going to be next session? And a lot of that depends on what the state's fiscal situation looks like. And then I'll just end with this. That issue is as long as we're working on it together, that issue's never going to go away. And I think we need to keep on bringing it forward until the state of Nebraska addresses the fact that we are an excessively regressive state when it comes to how we tax water. So we're never going to give up. I don't know if next year is going to be the right time, but we're going to keep after it.
I want to commend you for a job well done. Thank you for the good work you do.
Yeah, thanks for being down in the lion's den.
Especially for your work with the county board and securing the funds, once again.
Thank you.
Do any board members have any further comments? No, looking good. Are there any members of the public in the audience today who would like to make any comments? And if so, please step up to the podium and state your name and address. Okay, seeing none, the committee meetings have now concluded. We will reconvene in 10 minutes at about, looks like to me about 5 after 4 or so. Thank you. Oh, good. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Let's try that again. Good afternoon to all who are participating in the Metropolitan Utilities District Board of Directors regular board meeting today, August 6, 2020. This meeting is being broadcast live from the Legislative Chamber at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center located at 1819 Farnham Street. As mentioned prior to the committee meetings, please continue to abide by the health officials' recommended guidelines for wearing face masks and maintaining social distance of 6 feet from one another. Roll call, please, Mary.
Frost. Here. McGowan. Howard. Here. Kavanaugh.
Here.
Bagley.
Here.
Cook. Friend.
Here.
I'd like to advise those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall of the Legislative Chamber. And now for those who wish to participate, we will stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, approval of the minutes for the committee meeting and the regular board meeting for July 2nd, 2020. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Frost. Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley. Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Capital expenditures, Director Friend.
Capital expenditures, first tab, item number 5, discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Mr. DeBoer dated July 27th.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Frost. Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates, again, Director Friend.
Thank you. Tab 6, also discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Mr. DeBoer dated July 27th.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Frost. Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Bids on materials and contracts, Director Friend.
Item number 8, notice, I'm sorry.
7.
I'm one ahead. Item number 7, bids on materials and contracts for July, also discussed in committee. Move approval as outlined in the memo from Mr. Zellers dated July 23rd.
Second.
We have a second. Could we get a roll call, please?
Frost.
Aye.
Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Notice of purchases between $25,000 and $50,000, Director Friend.
Item number 8, notice of purchases be placed on file.
Item agenda number 9, main extensions, Director Friend.
Thank you. Main extensions also discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Mr. O'Brien dated July 27th.
Roll call, please.
Frost. Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Wage and salary increases and ratifications, Director Bagley, please.
I move that we approve the items presented by Ms. Savine during the committee meeting and as outlined in the memo dated July 27th from Ms. Savine.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Frost. Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Legislative update, Director Kavanaugh, please.
Legislative update will be placed on file. There were no changes, so no vote required.
Other matters of district business, oh, I'm sorry, I've left you off. Mary, please.
No vote.
Okay. Other matters of district business for discussion. Do any board members have further comments? Do any of the members of the public have further comments? Any comments? And if you do, please come up to the podium, state your name and address. We are now going to go into closed session for the next agenda item, Board members, as you know, we will be meeting in the room behind us. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
I move we go into executive session for the purpose of real estate matters.
Second.
Thank you. You need a roll call on this?
Frost? Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh? Bagley?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, tap on and then shut it off.
Okay.
motion to return to open session?
Second.
Thank you. You want to do a roll call?
Frost. Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Do any board members have any further comments? Are there any members of the public in the audience today who would like to make any comments? If so,
Madam Chair, do we need to make a motion to go back into regular session?
I think we just did that, didn't we?
Is that what that was? Okay. I didn't hear, I'm sorry. I said yes, but I didn't know what the heck I was voting on, so.
Well, you're
Sorry about that.
You're back in regular session now. Let's see, is there any member of the public here that would like to make any comments? I don't see anyone coming up. And in that case, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you. And a roll call.
Frost. Howard.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Bagley.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you.